Hello everyone, now let's talk about variable identification and measurement in quantitative research. Okay, so now let me first remind you about this. Quantitative research study is one that collects some type of numerical data to answer a given research question, as opposed to the qualitative research that collects non-numerical data, or most of the data will be verbal data or from some documents, archives, and everything else. But quantitative research, again, the keyword in quantitative research is numerical data, quantitative data, numbers. Now let's first define variable. So what is actually variable? Variable is a characteristic or phenomenon that can vary across or within organisms, situations, or environments. So the keyword of variable is variation. The opposite of variable is constant. Constant is something that does not vary, so it stays the same. So for example, gender. When you say gender, it is a variable because it has a variety of options, at least two, male and female. But for the male and female itself, it's called a constant. So male itself and female itself, they are constants. But gender or sex are variable because they contain several different types of constants, something like that. So the keywords of variable is something that the variation. There are different types of variables. The first one is the independent variable. Independent variable is the variable that is presumed to cause changes in another variable. In survey research, we can only make assumption that the independent variable is presumed to cause changes in the other variable. In experimental research, we can be relatively more kind of sure that the independent variable, at least one of the main variables that might cause changes in the other variable. So the other variable that I was talking about is the dependent variable. The dependent variable is the variable that is presumed to be influenced by one or more independent variables. So again, in survey research, it is presumed, so we make assumption. But of course, based on theories and literature reviews, past research, but in experimental research, again, we can be more sure that dependent variable might be really influenced, affected by the dependent variable. The other variable is extraneous variable. Extraneous variable is the variable that might compete with the independent variable in explaining the outcome. So this might also actually explain the changes of the dependent variable beside the independent variables itself. In experimental research, we will attempt to control this extraneous variable as much as we can. In survey research, there will be it will be we will have this lack of ability to control many extraneous variables. So we can do something a little bit to control the extraneous variable by doing some statistical, by measuring them and doing some statistical analysis. But still, as I have said in my previous video before, that in survey research there might be other factors because it's not done in laboratory and very controlled setting. So then there might be these variables that out of the researchers' control. Now let's talk about measurement. There are at least two types of measurements. The first one is physical measurement. This is anything that we can touch, a lot of things, yeah, like something like height, weight, yeah, the length of a book, the length of something, volume, or any other type of physical measurement, including the speed, the reaction time, duration. But psychological measurement is something that's more abstract, something like intelligence, the self-esteem, intention of conducting or doing a particular behavior. Those are psychological measurements, something that's more abstract. In doing surveys, we typically use questionnaires as the instruments to measure the variables that we want to examine. So most survey research relies on the use of questionnaires to measure variables. And in doing surveys, we also would like to measure or ask demographic variables. Demographic variables describe the characteristics of the people who are being surveyed. So we are asking them about their age, about their gender or sex, about maybe the major educational background. If relevant, we might also ask about their ethnicity, about religion, about their subjective social status, etc. Anything that we think are relevant to our research question. The accuracy and precision of questionnaires requires expertise and care in their construction. Why? Because it's a self-report questionnaire. Yeah, so the results will be depending on whatever the participants report. So we have to construct the questionnaires as clean as possible, as clear as possible, as valid and reliable as possible. Self-report scales are used to assess people's preferences and or attitudes. Yeah, this is the easiest way. So we're just asking people, and you might have been also a participant in many surveys, research, and you might have already completed some type of questionnaires, and you were where in which you were asked, yeah, to report about your opinions, your attitudes, your impression about something, your perception, your emotions, even about many things. Reliability refers to the consistency of measurement and is frequently assessed using the test-retest reliability method. So the keyword of reliability is consistency. So you would want to get the same response, to the same questionnaires in any setting. So if you give the questionnaire right now in a particular setting, and then you give again the same participant the same questionnaire, you would want to get the same response. It means that if that's the case, it means that your self-report measure or your instrument is reliable. So if, for example, if someone using a particular IQ test, someone get 118, for example, in one situation, then you would want that person to get 118 again, even after, like 6 months or 1 year, 2 years later, or 3 years later. So consistency of the result of the measure. So test-retest reliability method is when you are testing your measure, your questionnaire, your test or scale, like at least 2 times, like in a time series. So you're using your measure right now, and then you want to use it again in another year or 2 years later, but you are using the same questionnaires and with the same participants. That's what is called the test-retest reliability method. Reliability is increased by including many similar items on a measure, by testing a diverse sample of individuals, and by using uniform testing procedures. So you can actually use similar items on a measure, and perhaps you might have experienced this whenever you're completing a questionnaire. Maybe someone asks you about uh, an item. Yeah, there's one item that, oh, I think I have responded to these items like before, like just 5 items ago, like something like this, the same items. Or we might use different types. So maybe we ask, do you want to feel happy every day? And then another time we're asking, do you want to feel unhappy every day? Then when someone said yes to do you want to feel happy every day, then they should say no to the do you want to feel unhappy every day, something like that. So it's these 2 items, although worded differently, but they're actually measuring the same thing. By testing a diverse sample of individuals, yes, you want to use your test, your questionnaire, your scale in one culture and then in another culture, and you want to get similar pattern of responses across cultures and also across times. And by using uniform testing procedures, so if you are using a standardized procedure, so if you have a you need to have a standardized procedure to do the test retest reliability strategy to check your whether your measurement is reliable enough. So you need to perhaps if you use different testers, they have to follow the same scripts, and maybe similar environment. So if it's in the classroom, then you would want to do it the same way another time. So that way you kind of like minimize the other factors that might also influence the responses of the participants. Another term besides reliability that we have to really pay attention to about our measure is validity. Validity refers to the truthfulness of a measure. Does it really measure what it intends to measure? So it's not the consistency, but the truthfulness. Like, is it really measuring something that we want the measure to measure? So if we want to measure intelligence, so does the test really measure intelligence? Construct validity represents the extent to which a measure assesses the theoretical construct it is designed to assess. So this, like what I said before, when you have an IQ test, the intelligence test, you want that test really measure intelligence and not something else. Yeah, not self-efficacy, not internal motivation. Yeah, nothing else, only intelligence. Construct validity is determined by assessing convergent validity and discriminant validity. Convergent validity is you are comparing your measure with another measure that measure similar construct, similar concept. So maybe you have an IQ test that uses like verbal and quantitative questions, and then another IQ test use figures. Yeah, and then but both of them are supposed to measure the same construct, the intelligence, the IQ. So you use these 2 tests, yeah, and then you compare the results, yeah, and then you compare the results from these 2 tests, 2 different types of tests, and you would want the results to be similar. So if one participant got like 118 in one test, then you would want at least similar result, yeah, at least between the same in the same range. Yeah, if someone get average IQ in one test, then in the other test he or she should also get average IQ score. Discriminant validity is the opposite of convergent validity. So you're comparing your questionnaire, your measure, with another measure, another questionnaire that actually measure totally different thing. So one, maybe that you're using the verbal and quantitative type of test to measure intelligence, and then you compare it with another perhaps similar, like verbal and quantitative, but not for like in verbal and quantitative forms, but not for measuring intelligence, but maybe for measuring academic success, like something different. So it should be different. You should get the different results. So convergent validity, you want to get similar results from both types of measures. Discriminant validity, you would want to get different results from two types of measures that are that intend to measure two different constructs. Some things to consider when constructing a questionnaire. What construct do I need to measure? Perhaps you have this question in your mind. First, write clear research questions or statements that identify what will be studied. The constructs that need to be measured will flow from this question. So for example, how does sleep deprivation affect academic achievement? The constructs that we want to measure will be sleep deprivation and academic achievement. The second question, how to improve the use of sepeda kampus? So the construct that will be measured is the use of sepeda kampus. How education affects well-being. So the construct that will be measured will be perhaps the education strategy or teaching strategies and well-being, psychological well-being or subjective well-being. And then from this, you will develop operational definition of each of your construct. So what is operational definition? An operational definition explains a concept solely in terms of the observable procedures used to produce and measure it. For example, intelligence. Intelligence can be defined operationally by using a paper and pencil test emphasizing understanding of logical relationships, short-term memory, and familiarity with the meaning of words. So we define the intelligence until the operational way. So even we know how to measure intelligence. So we explain it here, paper and pencil test. So what are the aspects of the intelligence that we want to measure? The logical relationship, the short-term memory, and familiarity with the meaning of words. That's how we are gonna measure intelligence. So how do we do that? How do we operationalize the variable? First, break down the construct until we get the domains or subdomains that can be measured with a single question. So for example, to measure formal education, we can break it down into number of years one went to school. So we're asking how many numbers of years have you been to school? Have you been to school? Private or public school? The size of the school and the classes taken. Informal education, you might ask about on-the-job training that they were taking, apprenticeships in many places, workshops and mentoring experiences. Well-being, we might ask the aspects will be related to physical health, mental health, and also financial health. So we are really breaking down each of our variables into like very small domain or subdomain. So now, after you watch this video and the previous video, maybe you can start constructing or operationalize your each of your variables. So you already have the problem, the research problem. You already have the hypothesis. Now you can operationally define your variables that you want to examine in your survey research. Okay, good luck. I will see you again in the next video.